All right, everybody is leaving New York and New Jersey because of high taxes, regulation, dislike of business, and other crazy things. $700 billion worth of income have left. 3 million people have left. That's incredible. So let's talk about why, wherefore. Steve Moore, host of More Money on WABC Radio, and Liz Peek, syndicated columnist and Fox News contributor. Steve Moore, this is from the hotline, Prosperity Hotline. 3 million people have left New York and New Jersey in the last how many years? 10 years or so. That is a lot of people, and they've all gone to Dallas, Texas, or Miami, Florida. Why is that?
Well, by the way, that's probably 5 congressional seats that those states will lose in the next decennial census because so many people are leaving. And I just want to emphasize a point. That's the net number of people who have left. In other words, that's the number of people who have left minus the number of people who've come in. So it's a huge exodus. This is the big story in America today, Larry. It's very simple. The blue states, especially those blue states with high taxes, what am I talking about? New York, New Jersey, California, Illinois, are being bled to death. And where are they going, Larry? You know exactly where they're going. They're going to where our buddy Art Laffer is. They're going to Tennessee. They're going to Texas. They're going to Florida. Gee, what do those states have in common? Oh, they don't have any income tax at all. So you pay 14% in New York, or you can pay 0 in Miami or 0 in Dallas, where I am right now. And I'm telling you, if Mamdani wins this election, and he raises that tax rate another by 2 or 3 percentage points, I believe that the exodus of people who make 6, 7, 8 figures is going to be out of the city. And then, Larry, who's going to pay the bills?
Yeah, well, he's going to try to keep taxing everybody. Liz Peek, the other thing that's so interesting is you've got economic illiteracy. So we're going to have rent controls as much as possible. In fact, I have Mamdani. Here's a little sound from Mr. Mamdani on rent controls. Take a listen.
And freezing the rent, right? This is about 2.5 million New Yorkers in a city of 8.5 million. The mayor has the power to freeze their rent. I am saying I'm going to do that for 4 years.
Freezing the rent for 4 years will really be a destroyer of the city and its homes. And it would just be the worst imaginable thing. And this guy loves it.
You know, it's amazing. He went to Bowdoin College, paid $65,000 a year, presumably, to learn what, Larry? It's kind of hard to figure, right? This is a policy that every economist in the world, liberal, center, right wing, says is completely unworkable. Why? Because if landlords can't make money and costs do go up year after year, so they lose money every year that there's a rent freeze, they stop investing in the housing stock. The housing stock deteriorates and declines. And guess what? At the end of it, there is a spike in rents every single time. This is not rocket science. It's common sense. But I have to say, it's only one of the areas where Zoran Mamdani defies common sense, defies logic, and has these ridiculous platitudinous responses that are completely unspecific. I think it's horrifying that so many of his followers are simply not thinking through what he's saying.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's the trouble here. I don't know what they're thinking. They may just love socialism. I don't know. I mean, my other favorite one is Soviet supermarkets. He's a big fan of that, Soviet supermarkets. You know, that's just what we need. Steve Moore, on a more serious note, look, this shutdown has caused a good deal of hardship, air traffic controllers and people in the military. But here's the point. 42 million Americans are on food stamps. Now, you wrote about this again today, and 42 million on food stamps. I think there has to be an audit there. That just does not. That sounds like there's some waste, fraud, and abuse. That sounds like, for example, able-bodied people are getting food stamps, and maybe they should go out to work. I mean, I don't want to take food from anyone's mouth, but I'm just saying 42 million, that number, I think, has really, it's skyrocketed during COVID. I'm not sure it's come down much, if at all, during the prosperity. What do you think about this?
Well, I think it's an outrage. It's a disgrace that the richest country in the world, the United States, somehow has 42 million people, or 1 out of every 9 families, that say they can't put food on their table. And I think what's happened is we've created a culture of dependency here. And once you said it very well. Once they go on food stamps, they don't come off. And do you remember under Obama when they expanded food stamps and all the Democrats said, "Oh, it's a stimulus to the local." They were encouraging people to go on food stamps because they said it's a stimulus to the local economy. Here is the problem why the costs of that program have escalated and so many people are on, because you've got, I think it's 21 states, all of them blue states, that will not even subject themselves to a federal audit. So we don't know how many illegal immigrants are on. We don't know how many people are getting food stamps from many states. There's stories of people getting food stamps from 3 or 4 states. We don't know how many of these people are able-bodied. You and I and Liz, I think, feel very strongly, if we're going to give people a benefit and they're able-bodied and they're of working age, they should get off their butts, stop watching TV, stop playing computer games, and get a job.
I mean, Republicans, Liz, should not be afraid to talk about this kind of thing. All right, now the shutdown, maybe that's the wrong moment right now today. But as they move forward on this, they've got to, I mean, the DOGE effort to weed out waste, fraud, and abuse, it's not even a programmatic change. It's a fraud, you know? Let's look at this thing and see who's earning. It's true for a lot of small entitlements, Liz. GOP's got to be strong and tough on this.
Yeah, but it's the same argument, really, when we talked about Medicaid reform, Larry. These programs were not set up to be accessed by able-bodied single people who can basically fend for themselves. But going back to what we talked about earlier, Democrats hope to attract people to those states, right, New York, California, Illinois, et cetera, and keep those congressional seats by dint of filling up their population for the next census by giving them all these benefits. I mean, this is not rocket science. This is what they're doing, and it's an absolute fraud on the American taxpayer.
Well, we'll see who wins tonight, and we'll see if anything's going to change or not. Economic literacy really keeps spreading its wings. Anyway, Steve Moore, thank you. Liz Peek, I appreciate it very much.